While fires involving hybrid or electric vehicles are not considered to be any more dangerous or likely to occur than in conventional vehicles, they do present some unique characteristics that firefighters must understand to safely and effectively extinguish the fire. The use of standard firefighting equipment is acceptable for extinguishing a hybrid or electric vehicle fire, since the high-voltage system is electrically isolated from the vehicle's chassis and does not have an earth-ground reference. The electrical current does not seek a path to ground, preventing the electrical current from traveling up the fire stream. The use of NFPA-compliant firefighting ensembles with SCBA provides the appropriate level of thermal and respiratory protection. However, firefighters should avoid direct contact with the high-voltage battery assembly and high-voltage components because structural PPE does not offer sufficient electrical protection. Because fires involving the high-voltage batteries take longer to suppress, in some cases up to an hour, it may be necessary for firefighters to exchange SCBA cylinders during the extinguishment process. If the high-voltage battery is not involved in the fire, handle that fire just like a traditional vehicle fire, using typical tactics and water supply requirements. As with any vehicle fire, be sure to chock the wheels as soon as it is safely possible to do so to prevent the vehicle from moving. Refer to NFPA's Emergency Field Guide and the manufacturer's Emergency Response Guide for information on shutdown and disabling the vehicle's high-voltage circuits. Since high-voltage battery fires can typically require more than 1,000 gallons of water to extinguish, be sure to establish a water supply from a hydrant or static water source. During a study conducted by the NFPA and Fire Protection Research Foundation, one electric vehicle high-voltage battery fire took over 2,600 gallons of water to fully extinguish. When responding to an area without a reliable water supply, a company officer should request at least one additional engine and should be prepared to establish a water shuttle operation, especially in an offensive fire attack operation. The tests, conducted on passenger vehicle-sized batteries, provide a baseline estimate that will likely translate into longer suppression times with trucks and buses because their high-voltage batteries are often much larger. Failure to establish an adequate water supply prior to making an offensive attack could result in running out of water prematurely. If the fire reignites, there may not be any water left over to protect potential exposures. The same principle applies here as with the use of firefighting foam. Ensure that you have enough extinguishing agent, in this case water, available on scene to provide a better opportunity to maintain the constant flow required to extinguish a high-voltage battery fire. When dealing with a high-voltage battery fire, always consider the size of the battery and its location within the vehicle. In hybrids, the batteries are typically located in the rear of the vehicle. They are accessible through the cargo space, allowing for more direct water application. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, have much larger batteries that are typically located in harder-to-reach areas, such as under the floor pan. In these models, it is more difficult to get water directly onto the battery. Low ground clearance can also make reaching the underside of the battery area difficult. On transit buses, the batteries are typically located on the roof in battery tubs. The height and their enclosures will make access with a hose stream difficult. Consider the use of an aerial-mounted master stream device to achieve the appropriate angle. On trucks, the high-voltage batteries are attached to the frame rail, which is more accessible. In some instances, the batteries may be mounted on the inside of the frame rails, which will limit accessibility. Always consider the extent of the fire within the battery and look for any pre-existing openings, such as air vents, into the battery case that will allow the water to directly reach the burning cells. Determine the location of the high-voltage battery within the vehicle by referencing NFPA's Emergency Field Guide or the manufacturer's Emergency Response Guide. For quicker extinguishment, keep a continuous application of water on the area that is burning for a prolonged period of time before moving to another section of the battery. Also, continue to apply water after flames are no longer visible to sufficiently cool the battery pack and reduce the risk of reignition. In the event the high-voltage battery catches fire, it may be preferable to allow the fire to continue to burn inside the battery case until the electrolyte is burned out, if the situation allows. Since the case is sealed, it is difficult, if not impossible, to get the extinguishing agent directly onto the burning cells. The only way to stop the fire from propagating from cell to cell is to put a sufficient amount of water on the outside of the case to cool the battery down and stop the reaction. If the decision is made to allow the battery to burn, be sure to protect any exposures. As with materials found in conventional vehicles, the burning of a battery can produce toxic materials, so SCBA must be utilized. Also, bystanders should be kept clear of smoke and combustion byproducts. Never pierce, cut, pry, or dismantle any of the vehicle's structure, including the floor pan, in an effort to get water directly into the battery, because you may come into contact with a high-voltage component, risking potential injury. Before removing a vehicle from the scene, monitor the battery area for any hissing or popping noises and smoke. If there is visual access to the high-voltage battery, use a thermal imaging camera to determine if the battery has cooled down or if it is getting hotter over time. If the battery continues to heat up, it indicates the fire is still active. The usefulness of thermal imagers are limited, however, by your ability to visually access the battery case. Because of the possibility of reignition, NHTSA and NFPA guidelines currently recommend vehicles be kept at least 50 feet from any combustible materials when stored post-fire or when there is any damage to a high-voltage lithium-ion battery. The goal is to protect any potential exposures should the battery reignite. This guideline, however, was designed for smaller passenger vehicles, so consideration should be given to increasing the distance based on the size of the vehicle. Firefighters should follow recommended disabling procedures as soon as possible and before overhaul operations take place. During the overhaul process, avoid contact with high-voltage cabling and components. Even if standard disabling procedures are followed, there is the potential that the relays in the high-voltage battery may have fused in the closed position if they were exposed to enough heat. This would keep the high-voltage circuit energized, even if the vehicle were shut down. Always remember, while special equipment is not required to fight fires in hybrid or electrical vehicles, securing an appropriate water supply and following the water application techniques outlined in this training will result in a more effective extinguishment operation. Additionally, consider that a damaged lithium-ion battery poses a delayed fire risk, which could occur hours or even days later. Notify a dealer or manufacturer representative that you have a damaged battery. Also, tow operators should be informed not to store a severely damaged vehicle containing a lithium-ion battery within 50 feet of a structure or other vehicle until the battery can be properly discharged.